Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Matthew Martin M500Cu. Cu, of course, meaning copper. It's a very interesting pen to check out. I want to thank very much my buddy Dave for agreeing to send it along. That's really kind of him, and I wouldn't have gotten a chance otherwise, so thanks, Dave. Next thing, let's do a little size comparison here. This is actually not a very large pen. I mean, at some level here, let's come on. Get that on there. Here it is against your Parker Jotter, which is one of the pens I always talk about on my channel. Provides a really nice just choice for everyday carry. Pilot G2 sort of pen, a generalized big click stick pen, and of course a ballpoint pen that I lifted from a Hampton Inn. So you can see it's a little smaller than most, especially when it's folded up in the pocket there. Makes it substantially smaller. Here it is against a couple of other more pocket-focused pens. Here it is against the Kaweco Lilliput. So you can see that size-wise, it is in fact very similar, even if diameter-wise, they are very different indeed. Here it is against the, Urban Survival Gear Tie Scribe Bolt, which is one of my very favorite pens for everyday carry. And then there's this little guy, which is probably my favorite little pocket pen at this point. This is the Vision Metal Design LP5. And there's a lot of similarities in terms of the overall approach here, but you can see here that size-wise, they are very, very different. And so there you go. Then finally, a quick note on this. The maker of this pen is a guy named Matthew Martin, who is actually the son of R.J. Martin, the famous knife designer. And so that is that's something to keep in mind, and that this has some serious EDC heritage, if you will, as a result of that. So, anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting little copper pen here. So on the good side, you know, I gotta be honest, the heft of this guy is very pleasant. This is gonna be one of those things that I talk about as being both good and ugly, which is kind of always hilarious. But the thing is, this does, in the hand, there is an element to which this feels very nice. It has the heft of a much bigger pen here, but there's a feeling of substantiality that I do appreciate. It might get tiring after a little while, but at that level, the heft really does feel a little bit like quality, and that's kind of cool. And so I appreciate that. Next thing, this does use an off-the-shelf sort of insert. Here, I'll do a quick little disassembly for you. This is using a Lamy M22 refill here, and an M22 is absolutely a fine refill. It's not the greatest writer ever. It's not like, oh my God, but you know what? It beats some of the little proprietary off-the-shelf messes, or worse still, where they just take like a pen refill from one of these guys and then you just cut it in half or something like that. That gets ugly quick. But anyways, so it's using a refill that you can absolutely get and that you can get without going through the maker, and so that's something I appreciate. Next thing, this does have a very nice clip on it. You can see here there's got a lot of ramp to it. He's got very nice pocket texturing here. The clip is absolutely solid. It works nicely. It's good to go. And then finally, on the good side, the cap on this guy posts. So what I mean by that is that you can take the cap and screw it onto the back there, and not only does it make the pen a little bit more ergonomic and a little bit longer in the hand, but it keeps the cap, well, with you, such that if you end up dropping the pen, setting the pen down, whatever, the cap will be on there. And so I always appreciate that. When makers don't do that, it frankly bugs me. So that's to me what's good here. It has a very nice posting cap. It's got a great clip. It uses an off-the-shelf insert, and it has a very pleasant heft, although that's a double-edged sword there. To me, what's great about this guy is that it is very nicely machined. This is really, really well done at the machining level. It's hard to express to you these kinds of things at some level because, like, the threading on this is really, really nice. The internal threading to unscrew this is just like smooth, smooth, smooth. Oh my God, smooth. Given this has been carried, this has been worn, and so anything will smooth out a little bit more in those circumstances, but still. It is just beautifully made. You can see here, I mean, each individual thing is nicely machined. All the spacing is good. The machining up here is great as well. If we look inside of this guy, you can see that this isn't just like a hollow copper tube. No. Well, I mean, it is actually a hollow copper tube, but it's not like he just took tube stock and then threaded a little bit. No, he's carved out a hole that is pretty precisely sized for this particular insert here, which means that even without that, this isn't like shaking around in there. If we look on the inside here again, we can see evidence that this is, you know, he's made a variety of contours there to accommodate the spring and then the tip. That's nicely done. Look, this is a beautifully made little sculpture sculpture here that happens to be a pretty decent writing utensil, and that's nice. The construction on this is great, and also one other thing to note, by the way, is that the cap screws on above the, this part screws on below the cap, so that way when you undo the cap, you're never going to open the pen up. Little detail, but it's a nice detail. And so, to me, what is great about this 100% is that it is a beautifully machined little object. This is just nicely done. Even on the backside here with your glass breaker, whatever the heck tip, just nice. So that's what's great. Beautifully, beautifully made. So on the bad side, first off, a couple of little nitpicks and then some more substantial issues. First, the clip here. What you can see is that the clip is kind of, I get the impression that this top part here is screwed in, and then they've probably used some kind of thread locker or another to get that on there. What this means, that's fine, that's a reasonable approach, but what this means is that if for some reason your pocket clip snags on something, and given that you're going to be probably wearing this in a pocket rather than like a pants pocket, that's a very possible thing. A seatbelt grabs it, bends it back there. Unfortunately, because it's not a clip that can just be kind of flipped around and reversed, unlike on a lot of pens, you would probably have to send this back to the maker if that happened, because you can't rebend a titanium clip that's mounted into the pen. You'd need to be able to take it off. And so that's not a big deal, but it is probably a deal. Next thing, unfortunately, because this is using the little ME M22 refill here, it's not an incredible writer. I mean, absolutely not. Is it terrible? No, but here, look. Hey, everybody. This feels to me like, one of these guys, like a very vanilla sort of, hey, everybody. It's maybe a little bit better in terms of use, but practically speaking, this is not a pen that you buy because you want to write really nicely. It does the job, but it requires pressure. It's not something that you would choose over a roller ball or a really nice fountain pen or anything like that. Is that a big deal? No, and it's a limitation of the size. Speaking of which, the refills on this guy, the M22 refills, they're about $3 to $5 each, and they're not super widely available. The M20, you can get them on like Amazon, things like that, but you can't walk into any, given office supply store and walk out with an M22 refill in all likelihood. Unlike, for instance, with a Parker refill. Now, look, that's not something I'm dinging this pen for. Well, I am, but it's not the pen's fault. Anytime you want a really small refill, that's a price that you pay. You don't get an incredible small roller ball, things like that. But it is absolutely something you're going to want to keep in mind as you're doing this. If you want something that's going to be super travel friendly, where you can always get a refill, this may not be the best choice. You just want to pack a second one there. Next thing, there is the tactical point on the end of this thing. I don't know whether he's intending this to be a glass breaker or something you poke somebody with if you want to poke people with your pen. But what this actually functionally means for 99% of people is that this will be taken out of your bag from you at the TSA airport checkpoint. It is now the case, and I recently talked to a buddy who's in that field. They are aware of tactical pens as a thing, and they are now confiscating them. And this would be considered a tactical pen because it's got an impact tip on the end there, no matter what it's for. So as a result, you have this little thing on the end here, which for most people will never be a factor. The only thing that this will ever do is jab you in the thigh, but it could also mean that the TSA is going to steal your pen and then sell it to somebody else for a tidy profit later on. That's just not great. And so I kind of wish that there were a version of this without the heavy tactical tip there at the end. And it's something that means you're going to want to use something a little bit more, without the tactical fantasies if you're ever actually traveling by air. So there you go. Next thing, this is a copper pen, and that means it will absolutely patina. I actually cleaned this guy off with a polishing cloth at the request of my viewer before I did the review, and that's absolutely fine. But the patina is definitely a thing. This will look darker, and actually you can see a little bit closer to the patina on the very tip here. But still, it's going to look darker, and it's going to grow over time. For some people, that's actually a beautiful thing, but for others, if you want it to be extra shiny, copper is not going to be a choice. The other fact about the patina is that it shows substantial wear. What I mean by that is that I had this guy in my pocket, and, again, I cleared this with the viewer ahead of time, but as a result, it was rubbing against other things in my pocket, and there were places where the patina actually started to rub off. Anytime you've got a soft metal like copper touching a harder metal, your keys or something like that, that can be a factor. And so the patina will show the wear and the scuffs from things in your pocket, even when the metal itself doesn't. And so that's something you want to keep in mind. If you don't like the patina, patina and you don't want it to show wear, you're probably going to want a different metal. But again, I can't fault the pen too much for that. That's the fact of the material. A couple of design flaws outright for me. Well, I don't know if it's a design flaw, but it doesn't work for me, is the size of this guy. This is a super thick pen. I mean, if we compare it here to the tie scribe bolt, this is a really thick pen. I mean, compare it to the Pilot G2. This is a really thick pen. I mean, this is a thick pen, and ultimately for me, with my smaller hands than most, ergonomically speaking, that's not a huge win. I mean, it's okay, I can write with it, but it just doesn't feel as nice as something that is a little bit thinner. And so I'm not a fan of that. And honestly, it is also a very large pen for the refill that it's using. I mean, the refill in this guy comes up to like here or so. And considering that you can get something that is much more compact, like this LP5, which I do love, and it's a very unique little beast, but you can get something that is much more compact when closed and much bigger when opened, functionally speaking, I'm not super compelled and convinced by the form factor here. Not a big deal, but it is something you're going to want to keep in mind. And so, to me at least, all of that is the bad, is that it's thicker than it feels like is necessary, and to me at least, ergonomically, that's a little bit of a ding. It does take a strong patina, and that patina will show a little bit of wear more readily than you might expect. It has this tactical point on there, which will do nothing for 99% of people, except mean that the TSA can steal it from you if you fly. It has refills that are $3 to $5 each. It's not incredible writer, and the clip on this guy would probably have to go back to the factory if you bent it accidentally, although maybe there's a way around that. On the ugly side, there are two ugly things. One I alluded to earlier, which is that this is really heavy. I'll throw this guy on the scale here. You can see that this guy comes in at 2.84 ounces. That is a lot of freaking weight for a pen. And especially if we compare this to some other options like the Parker Jotta here, like the Pilot G2, given those are plastic pens. Here's another steel pen. This is 0.81 ounces, the Kaweco Lilliput. Or the Vision Metal I was just talking about here comes in at 0.72. Yet this guy, because it's made of a very heavy element and because it's pretty freaking huge, comes in at a big weight. I mean, there was a day at one point I carried these two things together. This little Kaiser Tangram and this guy. The knife is actually lighter than the pen, and that's a little crazy. And so that weight is unfortunately a little bit of a downside, because not only do you feel it in your pocket, but this becomes not really an option for the shirt pocket for me. It just felt like there was a pendulum, flying around inside my shirt, and that's just not great. Is that a pendulum in your shirt, or are you novelly happy to see? I don't know. But whatever it is, not a big fan of the heaviness on this guy. I get it, it's copper, but still, keep that in mind. The other issue for me is that it is super expensive. This is $145 right here. And you know what? At some level, okay, sure. And there were a lot of, I've spent more on pens, but the thing is, generally speaking, what you're paying for there is something like a very nice writing experience. You're paying for a great fountain pen nib. I mean, that's the same price as a Lamy 2000, which is one of the very best writing pens, frankly, out there. And considering this little Vision Metal guy can be had, I believe, in copper for about a third of the price, that's a lot of freaking money. Now, look, you're paying for somebody with a big name, and you're paying for art. You're paying for that machining quality, although the machining quality isn't all that different here. But that's just a ton of freaking money to pay for basically a chunk of copper that holds a ballpoint refill. Not something I'm super in love with. And so, I'm sure it probably costs similar to that to actually make it for him. It's made in the States, one guy, whatever. But to me, at least, that's a lot of money for what you're getting here. And so this is something where you're paying for art. So those are the ugly things, is it's very expensive and it is super heavy, which is actually to the point of being a practical issue. Final conclusions on this guy. Look, at some level, it's a really neat little sculpture. I mean, this is a beautiful little object, and it's absolutely a nice way to have some art with you that actually happens to write. You can use this to write in a tip. You can use this. I mean, you can use this. You can write with this, and it's no freaking problem. Yet at the same time, though, I found myself a little bit nonplussed by it. Part of it is the tactical tip, which just does nothing but limits the possible use cases for it. But also just the price, the weight, etc. And so ultimately for me, this is not a pen I would really even consider. I mean, I like the art very much, but I don't like the art that much that I'm willing willing to take the weight, that I'm willing to spend the money, etc. And especially when there are other options, like the Kaweco Lilliput, which is a very nice small fountain pen, or the Vision Metal LP5 here, or even a Fisher Space Pen bullet style pen. That works too. But given all those other options, this doesn't really appeal to me. But if you are really after the art side of it first, after the machining, after the name, and after the sculpture element, and you also happen to want a pen, and you're willing to pay the money, then okay, sure, there you go, I guess. So there you go, that's my final conclusion. It's absolutely not for me, but I can see for a certain variety of art collector, maybe this would be just what the doctor ordered. So there you go. Hope this has been interesting, that you enjoyed this review, and I will see you later. Copper? No? All right. Have a good one, everybody. Bye now.